Thank you for your interest in the Retained Recruiter show powered by iIntro. Before the show starts, I have a small favour to ask of you. Our goal is to provide you with the most insightful, helpful and practical recruitment knowledge and know-how from the best in the recruitment industry. If you like this channel and enjoy watching our content, hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as we upload a new episode. Thank you again, and as ever, we're rooting for your success. Now, time for the show. Hello and welcome to the Retained Recruiter show. My name is James.
And my name is Jo, and thank you very much for joining us here today, everyone.
Yeah, indeed, it's great. And Jo, who are we joined with today? Oh, joined by, not with.
Joined by, yes, exactly. So we've got a fantastic guest this year even. So this week we've got a fantastic guest. So we'd like to introduce you to Ian Chalmers. Welcome,
Indeed.
Ian.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, we're normally a bit smoother than that, Ian. So obviously we're excited to be in your presence. And just for everyone's benefit, Ian is the managing director of Holst, who are the European strategic partner of the McQuaig Institute. Also have Flow Profiler and Dr. Edward De Bono. And Ian's experience isn't just about the UK. He's got international experience which spans Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific, which gives him an insight into cultural insights around the globe, really. So that's why we're excited to have Ian with us today. And we've got a session which is going to last. How long are we on for today, Jo?
45 minutes. So it's a slightly longer session, but there is a lot to go through. I'm really excited about this. So we've used this particular psychometric for a long time, and I really like it. The idea behind today's session is talking about turning psychometrics into revenue, how to get clients to buy in. So we're going to be talking about why clients resist psychometrics, how to overcome that, positioning psychometrics as an essential hiring step in the assessment process, creating client demand without the hard sell. And then finally, we're going to talk about getting clients to use psychometrics consistently, because we love that word, don't we? Consistency is king.
And what just interesting, you mentioned the hard sell, Jo, there. This session today is meant to be educational and informative, and Ian's going to be sharing some really terrific insights with you. So please do take notes. And if you do have any questions, please drop them into the comments box. If you're not watching live, please still drop them in there. We will get back to you and respond to you on those ones. So it's always good to connect with you. So, Jo, why don't we kick off with the first topic and let's let Ian do some talking.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ian, I know you've got some presentation for us as well. This is very posh. This isn't what we're used to. Normally, people are just used to staring at myself and James. So, Ian, why don't you just kick us off with a bit of an introduction and an overview before we get into the questions that we've got for you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, guys. As I say, lovely to be here, and it's very professional. I mean, you're saying I'm professional because I've got a presentation or some slides or something.
Downhill, so
that opening was fantastic. So thank you. So yeah, as James says, I'm the managing director of Holst. We've been in the market for decades and decades now, through a few different owners, but I own the business, have done for the last kind of 15 years. We're really excited with the opportunities in the market at the moment. We work with iIntro. We've worked with iIntro for 15 years probably now. And I think just the way we got to where we are with iIntro was fascinating, because we started with you guys when you were in the recruiting business yourself, and then replicating what had worked. And McQuaig, the psychometric assessment that we worked mainly with iIntro, was such a core part of that, and such a core aspect of how you could give such a long guarantee for candidates that are into clients. So we're really excited to be here. So thank you for that.
One of the things, Ian, that, like I say, we've been working with you for so long, and I just want to say to people, because a lot of people, there are probably people listening who've got some preconceived ideas about what psychometrics is, because we've all had some experience of it. And I just want to say to people, one of the reasons why we partner with you, Ian, and the team at Holst with all of the tools, not just McQuaig, but that is the one we'll probably focus on a lot. And there's also Flow Profiler and the other parts. But it is because it's very recruitment centric, and that's our market. And there's a big differentiation, which I'm sure we'll come to, about some of the tools that we use, which help transform an existing recruiter into a consultative recruiter. So that's what we really want to focus on today. So let's jump into questions. What's the first one that we're going to get Ian to either share screens or give us his insight onto?
So I think this is the $1 million question. And again, we may have, we come across this quite a lot with clients who join us and, maybe our previous experience of psychometrics and clients may be resisting using a psychometric. So why do you think, Ian, that clients or businesses do resist using psychometrics in the first place? And is there a way for us to be able to, help them to overcome that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, from our experience, there are three main areas that clients don't necessarily get bought in particularly quickly. The first one is time. The second is the previous experience they've had with psychometrics. And the third is cost. So from a time perspective, psychometrics are always seen as, well, for a lot of organizations, individuals, they are seen as something that is going to add to their burden or add time that they're going to need to spend either sending assessments or reading reports or just managing it in general. And we don't believe that's true. And what I thought would be quite useful, do you think the audience is up for doing a little exercise at home?
Yeah.
Well,
Joe and I will do it, so we'll act as the audience who will participate and give you some immediate feedback. Yeah, people can actually do that as well.
It's always good to get buy-in from the hosts. So if you want to pick up a pen,
you could have told us that we were going to do this. I'll be typing into my screen.
All right, a pen or a stylus or whatever, a piece of paper, iPad, Remarkable, whatever you're using these days.
I'm ready.
What I want you to do, everyone in the audience, is just write down your name. Really simple.
Okay.
Just write your name.
We
Done?
can do this. Yes.
It's tough from there.
Give James a minute. Oh,
all right.
Oh, you gave it away, Joe. Yeah.
Okay. So take your pencil or your pen, swap hands.
Oh.
And do it again.
Oh, yeah.
I'm quite ambidextrous, I don't think that's called ambidextrous.
Not long enough. I've just called myself James. It's not the weekend yet.
Sorry, it's not Saturday night yet. Yeah. Okay. So, Joe, how did that feel?
A bit strange. I don't think that's too bad, actually.
I think you've done pretty well there.
It felt very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
you did.
I can't see my screen, so I'm virtual. Yeah, I made a mistake.
No problem. So what we tend to find is that you can do it. That's no problem. But it takes a bit longer.
Yeah.
It's harder. You have to think more. The quality isn't so good. And this is the same. And this is really, when we're talking about time, why aren't clients bought into psychometrics? It's because when we're looking at that, it's just a nice example of the behavioral fit, the behavioral demands of the role and fitting a candidate to that. So if you get the right behavioral fit between what the client is looking for, what the organization is looking for, and the candidate that you have, you get a quicker onboarding, a smoother onboarding, you get a better performance, you get happier people, you get happier candidates that have been placed, you get happier clients because they're performing quickly. And ultimately, when you're putting a guarantee in for a candidate going into an organization, you get a better fit, you get a better chance of that person staying. So there's huge benefits. So the question was, why don't clients kind of get that buy-in immediately? And it's because of the time. Now, that's organizations who tend to look at it at more of a tactical perspective and not necessarily a strategic perspective. If you're looking at it from a strategic perspective, you want the person to fit, you want them to stay, and you want them to perform. A psychometric assessment is a very small aspect, but it gives it rigor and it gives it science. And so spending 1 minute pre-hire doing some kind of assessments or some kind of understanding about the behavioral requirements is going to save hours and hours in the future, let alone how much that's going to cost. So that was the first one, is time. The second is the previous experience. When you speak to someone or meet someone and you talk to them about psychometrics, quite often you'll get I've been subjected to that before. And that's quite a telling response, right? Yes. It's, okay, I've gone through it, and what's happened? They've got the job, they haven't got the job, they've probably received no feedback. And so they're very wary of psychometrics or assessment tools. We know if we can start to explain some of the strategic reasons why you'd use psychometrics, that they start to warm up. And we know that the naysayers are always your best clients in kind of 4 or 5 years' time. They're going to be the ones who are so ingrained with psychometrics because they can see it and they've been convinced themselves. But typically it's because they've had a bad experience in the past, and a bad experience tends to be that they haven't had any context around it. Yeah. So when we're trying to get client buy-in, it's really important that they can complete an assessment themselves and that they can see the results, they get the opportunity to ask questions. So that was the second option and the second thing. And the third thing is budget. And I think why clients don't necessarily get bought in is that cost. HR budgets and budgets just in general, especially digital budgets, are under huge pressure these days. We've always been I say always, since the mid-90s, have always been a digital business. We had a DOS system, then a Windows system, then it was all online.
Yeah.
Post-COVID, every business has a digital component to them. And so the competition for spend, digital spend, is actually really high. So whereas before an HR department might have said, yeah, we're going to use an assessment tool, now they're having to look at HRIS, they're looking at ATS, they're looking at all kinds of different aspects. So that starts to become a bit of an issue. But again, I'm going to come back to the strategic aspect of this. What is the purpose of psychometrics? It's to make better, stronger, more successful hires. And if we can do that, then you've got a better chance of turning that client from a naysayer into a fan.
Yeah, I think when you, I mean, the naysayers, I think it's like I said, it's telling when they say I've been subjected to. So the language that people use is really important to sort of pick up on. And I say because of their experiences, and again, this is where I just want to sort of point out the experience that we're trying to cultivate here, working with you, Ian, but through the iIntro platform, is one of a consultative purpose, not one where you're subjected to it. And the two elements, I know you're going to talk about them later, in terms of how we bring on board, how we focus on the client, how we focus on the role, is really important, because most, and I say this with having asked this question literally thousands of times, most employers who come across this, they have just had experience of profiling candidates, and that's and I know that can be extremely useful, and I know it's happening, but we're obviously going to go a little bit deeper than that, because what we're trying to do is help recruiters have something different, than just being I can profile a candidate for you, almost as a throwaway giveaway. This is a critical, as you said, strategic part of the process. And when you build that into the conversation, clients will understand what it is that you do differently and why it's going to work. And Joe, you came up with a little phrase, a little 3 points there. Just want to add them on.
Yeah, so I think, Ian, one of the things that I picked up from what you said there, and I think this is really important, is the long-term goal of hiring is for people to stay, for people to fit, and for people to perform. Yeah. It's not just to recruit somebody into the business. And I think a lot of the times clients and recruiters, I don't think we help them. We work with speed, don't we? Delivering short lists of candidates or short lists of CVs to clients. So we become very front end and speed focused rather than sort of long-term results focused. And that's a big mindset shift. We talk, with our clients at iIntro a lot about this, that mindset shift is getting clients to see that, the time and the money that they invest up front in this is nothing compared to the time and the money they're wasting interviewing people that don't get the job, screening CVs that aren't right for the business, taking people on who ultimately leave or don't perform. So it's trying to shift. It's the redistribution, isn't it, of the focus on the process, I think.
It really is, because I know you guys have a recruitment or attrition calculator, don't you? And we do as well. And when we take clients through that, one of the things they don't really think about is the onboarding. They talk about the onboarding and training, but what they're not taking into account is the hourly wage of the manager or whoever's training that person. And then to go through all of that and then have to do it again, it's just an enormous amount of time. And every minute that the manager's spending onboarding or training a new hire, they're not generating, additional value for the organization.
Yeah, I think people have heard us say before that the challenge for recruiters isn't recruitment, it's actually retention, which is sometimes counterintuitive because recruiters, if they like high churn because there's more roles, well, that's what gives you opportunity. But the value that you add to a client is that retention issue, and that stay fit, perform mantra, Joe, is all focused on retention. And these are the tools that can help you deliver that. To deliver that phrase. Before we go on to the next question, I just want to say we just had some feedback where somebody said their left hand, or whichever their alternative hand, I should say, because I don't know whether left hand or right handed, is not readable. So, we have had somebody practice that and said, and I think there's a little smiley at the end of it because obviously they're struggling on that one. So that's a good point. Let's go on to the next question, Joe. What have we got next?
So positioning psychometrics as an essential hiring step. So let's talk about that. I mean, to even start the conversation off, I suppose, you've got some people who, some businesses who use psychometrics now. You maybe have some who've used them in the past, but not got the results that they were hoping for. So they've decided not to bother. And then you've got other organizations that have probably never used them before. So why is it important that we position psychometrics within their existing hiring process?
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to scribble on it. Can you let me know if you can see?
We can see it, and I'll tell you that was slick. That was like we're watching TV production.
So when we talk about this aspect of positioning psychometrics, we use this a lot, and it's called the 3 levels of assessment. And this is some research that we did in combination or conjunction with the McQuaid Institute many years ago. And it holds true today. When we assess individuals, we tend to see that the assessment falls into these 3 different levels. And if you can see this, this is the impact on performance. So as we go through the 3 levels, you can see that the impact, the performance, the capability is going to increase. So let's start at level 1. Level 1 is what we call the appears to, and that tends to be how a candidate appears to the interviewer. Now, this has changed a little bit over these last few years when so much of it is done by Zoom now, but actually it's the same thing holds true. And in some ways, it's even worse because you're now judging things like backgrounds and all kinds of aspects. But level 1, appearance, it's their mannerisms, their expressiveness. It's when you're meeting someone for the first time, it's do they have a firm handshake or a weak handshake, or do they look you in the eye? Do they come across? How do they come across? I always used to say that, for me, if someone was wearing a dark suit and white socks, that was always a thing that just triggered me, and then it became fashionable. So I'm just obviously too old. But
Ian, sorry to cut across you. The comments are saying they can't see it. They can't see anything on the screen.
Ooh.
You guys can, though?
Yeah, we can. Thanks for the comments, Mark.
Yeah,
we can Darren and Bob. We will be recording this, so it'll be able to watch back. So in the background, we're going to try and see if we can get something work on there. So Ian, whilst you got the visuals, you're going to need to turn your words into more visuals, because one of the things for those people who can't see this chart, which is a real shame, I've got to share with you, Ian. I probably may never have shared this with you before, but this was my penny drop moment for me. This when I finally understood this chart that you're sharing. And we'll try and post a copy of this into the LinkedIn profile. Into the LinkedIn, we'll get a screenshot of this image, Tina. If you drop that into the comments, perhaps people can see what Ian's talking about here. Yeah,
that's a great idea. And so, the only thing they won't be able to see is my terrible handwriting and scribbles.
Yeah, it won't be live on that one, but that's okay. I'm just going to send Tina a screenshot whilst we're talking. So yeah, carry on, Ian. But thanks for your comments, everybody. Thanks for interrupting.
Okay. So when we're talking about level 1, we're talking about these aspects of an individual that are some of these are going to be relevant in some roles. So client-facing roles, sales roles, that type of thing, where you have to have an incredibly good first impression. But I often ask this question as well: is that how long do you think it takes to make a first impression? So how long do you think it takes to make a first impression? And maybe in the chat, in the comments, people can give us some ideas.
I'm going in with somewhere between 10 seconds and 3 minutes.
10 seconds and 3 minutes. That's a fairly long range, but
it's actually hedging my bet. Am I still wrong, Ian, though?
A little bit over it, right? So it's a 1/10 of a second.
Wow.
So there was some research done by Princeton University, and it showed that we hold all of this information and biasness in our subconscious, and what we're doing is we're making those decisions. It's making those decisions for us all the time. And so when we meet someone for the first time, you're going to get that initial yes or no. It's very difficult for us to get past that, of course. So that's level 1. The appearance, it doesn't really hold a huge amount of value to many different roles. Level 2 is what we call the can-do. And so we're talking about the skills, experience, CV, education, all of those things that are on the CV. But think of the CV as the edited highlights of someone's career to date. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be telling you about the time they created low morale or the time when they left the organization, took all the clients with them. You're not going to see all of these things. And actually with ChatGPT now in our midst, the CV is really more relevant than it ever has been in the past. I'm sure everyone's heard of, taking my CV, taking the job description, putting it into GPT and saying, hey, write me a new CV for this role.
Yeah.
Write me a covering letter. So the CV, although important, and there's going to be some knockout criteria in there, it's not the thing that's really going to drive success. And actually, this is where we see between level 2 and 3. This is why a lot of recruitment can be broken or is broken, because actually we make so much of our decision on level 1 and 2. And by the time we get to level 3, we're not using anything to really dig down and dig into the candidates. So level 3 is all the hidden and intangible areas of a candidate. It's the attitude, it's the personality, it's the resilience, it's the maturity, it's the stability, it's the personality. It's all of these things that are so critical to the role and performance in the role, but we just do not see them in the interview stage. And actually, when they get in, you don't really see this for months until a person has got into a role, because those first 90 days, they're still actually acting, building networks, working through. You don't really see this for months and months. And for a lot of organizations, that's going to be past the probationary period. So this is absolutely critical. And when we work through this and we show this to organizations and we say, look, every organization has said they agree with this. I haven't had one that said no, but there's always a chance that organizations hire on level 1 and 2 and they fire on level 3. Candidates who don't match up to the role, it's typically something that is going to be ingrained or something that's able to be learned. It's not how they look. It's not what they've done in the past. It's how they're behaving in their new organization, how they're fitting into their culture, how they're fitting into their values, and how they're fitting into what is going to drive performance in that role.
I had an interesting comment from one of our clients in the Netherlands, a guy called Ellie Barenholz, who we worked with for many years. And you talk about level 1 and 2 pre-employment, level 3 post-employment, or the hiring criteria, and he calls level 3 the firing criteria. And what we try to do is bring the firing criteria into the hiring criteria level. That's what we're trying to do with this particular process. So again, I say a really important chart, Ian, that's up there. And
if I could just add something into that as well. So I think everyone can see it now, which is great. So thanks everyone for keeping us updated. And yeah, keep us updated, because there are a couple more visuals that Ian's going to show you as well. And I share your experience, Ian, of using quite odd, slightly, well, definitely subjective methods of assessment. I had a client who wouldn't take anybody on who was wearing brown shoes. I also had a client that during an interview would drop a pen on the floor, and if the interviewee didn't go to pick it up, then he wouldn't take them on either. So I think there is always, whether people know it or not, which is the point of the exercise, I suppose, but there is always going to be conscious and subconscious bias that creeps into an assessment process, particularly when you're hiring for your own team. In fact, the first time I ever met James and Plowman was at a recruitment expo that I'd done a talk on, and it was about the 7 hiring mistakes that we make when we're hiring for our own teams. And one of the solutions to not being subjective was to use science and to use objective information to help you to make a decision. So that level 1, I think, is sometimes quite hard for people to see past, isn't it? Or to not use as a selection criteria.
It really is, and you know, a lot of this then comes down to nerves as well for candidates coming into an interview. More and more of our clients are actually providing some interview questions to the candidates in advance of the interview, just to make that, give them a bit of an icebreaker, allow them to prepare. But then it starts, you know, if you look at these, you know, these aspects of level 1, this is expressiveness. You know, if you're not seeing the true candidate, you're never going to see the true person in an interview. No one's ever going to be, you know, as they're going to be after they've worked for the organization for a year. But it's just trying to remove yourself and become aware that if I'm making decisions now, and you can tell when you're doing it, you know, they look as though they're competent, they look as though they would present well. Like, you don't know these things, you just are trying to remove that from the decision-making process. The other thing as well, Joe, is that when we're looking at this, organizations, when they are promoting within as well, all of this tends to go out the window. You know, they'll know some of this, but then it's about, you know, going back to these kind of areas here. All right, so just because they've done this job over here, does that mean they can do another job internally?
Yeah, which is great. So this is something you could be using this at every level, I suppose, within a business, couldn't you? Entry level all the way through to internal talent mobility as well.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great, and I think it leads us nicely into the next question, which is all about how to create demand without a hard sell. Because, and as I said earlier, this was my penny drop moment or light bulb moment when I finally understood this and finally had the confidence to share that visual and discuss it with a potential client. Because, as you said, nobody ever disagrees with it.
Yeah,
it's a question of how you implement it, and that then comes across in terms of how you present it, sell it, whatever. So I think the next stage is probably going to be quite appropriate.
Yeah, I think so, because actually when you're looking at creating client demand, it's using the tools that you have access to. So this is something that we talk about, and in fact yesterday afternoon I had a client in Northampton and we were talking through this, because they've used this really successfully, and it's really, and if they're using it, and this is why I thought it would be good to have this discussion for recruiters, because if the clients that we're talking to are saying, yeah, this is really super important to us and super valuable, then this is a way that you can start to build this into your process as a recruiter as well. So this is all about building a job benchmark. And when we're looking at building job benchmarks...
You did that with your wrong hand, Ian?
Sorry? I'll switch hands and do it again. You definitely need to do that. What we're looking at here, so this is a software engineer role. Obviously, this isn't for James and I, this funky haircut. But if you're looking at this as a job benchmark for a role, then we use a tool called the McQuaig Job Survey. Now, the McQuaig Job Survey is a really super simple 10-minute survey, 10-minute assessment that you can ask someone else to complete, and they are completing it about the role. So typically, if you're working with, say you're working with HR, what you'd say is to the HR manager, okay, based on what you know about this role, what does success look like? And it's going to take them 10 minutes and it's going to generate a profile. And that profile is this job benchmark. And so that's kind of step one, or stage one, if you like.
Ian, and that's different to a job description, yeah?
Yeah, so the job description is going to be maybe some of the competencies. It's going to be maybe a day-to-day. It's going to be a description. What the job benchmark is going to be is it's going to be looking at the behaviors of that role. What type of traits are necessary? Does this need to be an assertive, competitive, people-orientated role? So is that important for that role? Is it a management role? Do they need to be able to work within structure, or do they need to be able to create structure? It's kind of just all of those aspects of trying to build that behavioral benchmark or job benchmark. So one option is to give it to the HR manager or whoever your stakeholder is and say, please complete this. Then the stronger option is then to say, not just one perspective, but you might ask a peer that is working within this, this same role to complete it. Then you might ask the manager to complete it. Then you might ask one of the team members, whoever's been managed by this person, to complete it. And so what you're looking for is much more of a holistic 360 perspective of the behavioral requirements of this role. Now, the reason I thought this would be useful to talk through is because with all the clients that we work with, and I know iIntro is exactly the same, is that this is a free tool. We don't charge for this. And the reason we don't charge for this is because we believe that it's fundamental to the success of psychometric assessments is to have that benchmark in place. And so you can start to see how you can really drive some value with the client before you've even got any candidates through, and before you've got a job description, but actually what you're doing is asking for their perspective on what the behavioral demands of the role are. Okay?
Yep.
All right. So that is one way of doing it, either asking one person or actually asking multiple people to look at the role. The secondary part, and this is what I was talking to the client yesterday about. The secondary is actually looking at your high and low performers. So what I'm going to do is going to draw a couple of lines, and we're going to start to talk about these. So at the top here, if we actually have a team that is big enough, now the more the better for this process, but you can do it with kind of as few as maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 people, but they've all got to be doing the same role. But pretend you've got, what have we got, about 16, 18 people in this team.
Yeah.
And what you're looking at is you're looking at high performers up this end, and then low performers or low performance down this end. Up here at the top, you have your absolute high performers. These are the people who just outperform everybody else in the team. You can count on them. They're the safe pair of hands that you give everything to. These are called your unicorns. Mm-hmm. The reason these are unicorns is because if they're so good at their job, the organization is going to do everything they can to hold on to these people. If they do move, the likelihood is that they're going to be headhunted. These people don't tend to come onto the recruitment market very often. So it's actually quite difficult to find these people. And what you tend to find is that actually with these people up here, there is something just different. They've got all the behavioral demands, they've got all the experience, but there's just something different about them. It might be their experience, it might be the way they come across, it might be the way they work with other people, work with clients, whatever that looks like. This secondary part here is your high performers. And actually, this is the pool that we want to get to. This is what we want to replicate. They are slightly easier to find. These are high performers. They're slightly easier to find because they're not your unicorns. They are going to be on the job market. They are going to move around. But they typically have the same type of behavioral makeup as your unicorns. But there's just not that necessarily X factor. Now, what you're trying to do, obviously, is recruit people at high performers and then hope that they turn into your unicorns when they start working for you, and they might just actually flourish at your organization. But what we're looking to do is we're looking to take these individuals and we're saying this person, this person, this person, and this person all have the same behavioral traits. So we know that if we hire those particular traits, again, we've got a much better chance of getting a high performer in that role. And then we're saying, okay, so this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, and this person all have a different type of behavioral trait. So we're starting to build up a picture. These low performers down at the bottom, we actually want to do the same thing with this grouping as well. Because if we know what we're looking for in the high performers, we want to see if there are any behaviors that are prevalent in the low performers down here that we want to avoid. So we are definitely looking for these people up here, and we don't necessarily want some of the behavioral traits that we're seeing that are correlated amongst this group down here. So you can start to build up that picture. Now, I talked at the beginning and I said, you know, this bit is free because we absolutely believe in it. This isn't free because we're assessing the individuals, but it is the most effective way to, again, get to a job benchmark. But you have options then. And what we tend to find with recruiters specifically is that they kind of start here and then they move to here. Mm-hmm. And then once they've been working with an organization for quite a while, they can start to look at this as an exercise to really ingrain that behavioral benchmark.
Yeah. And I think, Ian, you know, the title of this particular section here was how to create client demand without a hard sell. And what you're saying there is there's a complementary service that can be provided that can deliver the left-hand side of your screen as I'm looking, very effectively, and also position you in a consultative way, because you can start to give insights and help the organization articulate some of those thoughts, which, as Joe touched on earlier, they're sort of subconscious and they don't often come out, do they? Joe.
No, they really don't. And you know, the other thing, it's really interesting when you start to work with clients, because they say, well, can't you just give me a benchmark? And you say, sure. I mean, we can, but a salesperson in your organization is going to be very different from a salesperson down the road. A software engineer working for one of the big techs, one of the Meta or Google, that kind of move fast and break things methodology, it's going to be very different from a more traditional software engineering firm somewhere else. So you've really got to understand the behavioral demands in your organization. It's not as simple as saying, well, this is just a profile that we're going to use for a software engineer.
And one of the places I could see this really working would be within the recruitment industry itself. And traditionally, how as recruitment businesses, we're owners of recruitment businesses, we find it hard to recruit the right people for our businesses. You know, typically the attrition rate in our industry is very high. So I think that I'd like to hear your thoughts on how this could be applied, you know, specifically to the recruitment industry. But secondly, I think your point you just said there, Ian, again, I think is just perfectly, clarified by recruitment. So we all know thousands of recruiters, and I've worked with hundreds, if not thousands, of recruitment companies. And there are different types of recruiters. So a recruiter for a, legal retained recruitment organization would be different to a recruiter from a temp agency. The same but different. So same but different. So it's not just looking at what would a typical recruiter look like, because you might not hire typical. You want your version. You want the flavor of recruiter that sits well within your organization. And that's what this does, isn't it? So this is more bespoke.
Yeah, it really is, because what you're looking at is a couple of the personality traits kind of step out to me in that example. So things like fast-moving environments. So someone who's going to, if the role really requires, you're just going to be on the phones, you're going to be getting through so much, so many calls per day. These are your KPIs. This is what we want to achieve. Versus, I want you to go in for the first 6 months. All you're going to be doing is building relationships with your clients. Yeah. Those two types of roles, they're going to require different types of job benchmarks, and it's really important to understand in your organization which one is going to be best. And there's going to be nuances everywhere, but those are the types of really important things that have to be discovered up front before you bring someone in who you're going to expect to spend 6 months building relationships and all they want to do is close down business.
I think without the hard sell element, we do need to move on. But again, if anybody wants to get in touch, then we've flashed up a couple of points where you can get in touch with the team at Holst. Obviously, here at iIntro, we'd be happy to have a conversation with you and tell you how we integrate this and implement and put it into the world of recruitment. So please do get in touch with us. Ian, I just want to move on to the last question because there's a good question in the comment section I'd like to pick up on as well. But let's just get this final point through, Cam, which is all about how we can get clients to use Psychometrics consistently.
Yeah, so a pretty simple one here, but I think, again, it's just how do you get that more value from your psychometric use? So we've been talking about this benchmarking on this call now. Most organizations will use it here. The good ones use it here, and then the majority stop. And actually, if you think about it, what's one of the most important things when a candidate starts into your organization? One of the most important things is that they can build a really good relationship with their manager. And psychometrics help managers become leaders, because one of the fundamental aspects of leadership is being aware of yourself and how you need to adapt to lead your team. And people coming into your team are going to have variations. They're going to have differences. I can't manage Bob in the same way as I manage Jane, because how Bob likes to collaborate is different from how Jane likes to collaborate. So it's really trying to help clients understand that it's not just a recruitment tool. You start to look at onboarding, you start to look at how can I coach and manage this individual. And a lot of the time, the psychometrics, so from our perspective, this onboarding help, this coaching help, this management help, there's no extra costs for any of that, because all of the reports that you're getting in that recruitment phase also give you that management and onboarding and coaching support. So it really does start to build out that more strategic relationship that you can have with the client. And then ultimately, if you are getting all of this right to go through here, then the key thing here is then starting to retain. So how do you start to motivate those individuals? How do you really engage them with the organization? Because what you're looking to achieve is a long-term relationship with the client and with the client, but also with the employee, to get them to a point where they can promote.
And Ian, I think with what we've focused a lot here is on the benchmarking side, but the way that we generate a lot of that information is by actually working with the candidate on the candidate assessment, which we call a word survey, which generates all this information that's helpful in particularly in sections 3 and 4, develop and retain, isn't it? That's where the information gets generated. Yeah,
absolutely. A lot of it comes from the word survey. We have a fantastic section in there called the do's and don'ts.
Yeah,
and it's super, super helpful. If you're going to give one page to a new manager with the new team member, it's the do's and don'ts. How not to manage this person.
Yeah. Do you know what I really like?
Sorry, after you.
Just but there's two things that I really like that I just think are game changers. So one of them is the job fit interview guide. So once the client has done the job survey and the candidates have done the word surveys and you've matched them as a strong match, it produces the job fit interview guide, doesn't it? Which actually creates a series of bespoke questions that the business can use to interview the candidate based on strengths and maybe potential areas of development. So I really, really love that, because I think that it helps us as recruiters to educate our clients on how to interview better. The second one that I really like is the comparison report. So as you said before, so let's say we had sort of 3 hiring managers. We get this all the time, don't we, James? We get this feedback all the time. Look, there's 3 people involved in the recruitment process. What if they don't agree? They don't agree on the right type of person. So, one ends up rejecting them or whatever. So when that job survey has been completed by the client, if 3 of them have completed it, the comparison report shows you their individual results. And we've seen the quite heated conversations then erupt between the hiring managers. See, I told you we were always recruiting for different things. We've had it ourselves with our clients, haven't we, James, who were recruiting because they were both recruiting for a different type of person and they could never agree. It's so clever.
Which comes back to this. If you've got the 2 people, whoever they are, they're looking at the same role, they often come up with very, very different profiles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Indeed, we've all seen that so many times. It's then a question of, consulting with those clients to show them where you can help them, break the impasse really. Because again, the experience that a lot of recruiters have had is we've all had candidates going through for the rubber stamp interview, only for them to fall down at the final hurdle, and it's not because they changed skills or they had a bad day. It's because, and it could be the manager on this chart here, who's not been assessed to identify what he or she is looking for, only to find they're looking for something totally different. And although, others agree, it's not the right person. So again, some fabulous tools in there to help people. Ian, I'm conscious that we just haven't spoken about the rest of your thing, but I just do want to ask one question if I can before we wrap up, because it's good. It's a fair question. I think it's quite a nice question. And I think the question, although I don't know the name of the user, it's just a LinkedIn user, says, we say science, but every psychometric says that. Is there a report or study that compares and contrasts or proves that this is better? This presumably means by McQuaig. That may help us overcome objections based on prior experience. So what's the difference? If you could sum up the difference, the value that a recruiter using this will be able to provide to an organization by using this system, perhaps over other systems, without naming names, or name them if you like.
So I think the easiest thing is, because there's lots on the market these days. It's a very different market from what it was 20 years ago. The key thing I'd say to anybody that was using a tool is do a bit of due diligence. Look at the technical manual and make sure that it's got the proper validation, it has all the proper research, and it does what it says it does. I'm not so sure about some of the tools around on the market these days that they have gone through the same amount of rigor that we have over the past 50 years, continually improving on the research studies to make sure that the tool is incredibly robust and incredibly valid. So I guess that's the easiest way to do it, is just look at the technical manuals for each of the tools.
Yeah, great. Okay, hopefully that's a good bit of advice, and we can obviously pick up on that when people get in touch with us. We're happy to talk more. Listen, we've overrun a little bit, Ian, which obviously means we could obviously carry on talking for ages. So we're going to have to get you back at some point.
Yes.
Some sunny day when you're back in the UK. I know you're in the UK today. But listen, on behalf of us all, Ian, I think there's been some fascinating insights. I hope people took some notes. Write them with the wrong hand, perhaps. But in terms of getting us through, I think it's been really valuable for people, and I hope they do pick up and either connect with you or connect with us here at iIntro for either that. So thank you very much on behalf of us all, Ian, for doing that. Joe, anything to add before we let Ian give his final farewell?
The exact same. I think we 100% would love you to come back on. We have not even scratched the surface, I don't think. We've kind of danced around the top of it for a while, but it's so intriguing. And I think the more transactional recruitment is becoming, the more consultative we need to become, the more we need to be doing this type of stuff to stay ahead of our competition in recruitment. So I think, if recruitment businesses aren't looking at putting this in place for their clients, they really, really should. And I also really think that recruitment businesses should be looking at putting this in place for themselves as well. Practice what you preach. So yes, it's been insightful. So thank you very much, Ian, for coming on, and do come on again. And please find Ian on LinkedIn, ask him lots of questions.
And there's other stuff about flow profiler and EQ, which we haven't touched on. And that's what you said, Joe, we're just scratching the surface. So there's so much more. And if they go to your website, weareholtz.co.uk, they will find a lot more information on that as well. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. See you again next time. See you in a couple of weeks.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.